This is the month that decides whether your daylily comes back in September with a second wave of blooms, or just sits there as a clump of green leaves until frost. And almost nobody explains why. The plant that was covered in flowers in June suddenly slows down. The leaves start showing brown streaks. Or you notice a strange orange dust on the underside of a leaf and have no idea what you're looking at. Most gardeners respond the same way every single time. They snip off the dead flower and leave the stalk standing. They see brown spots and assume the plant is dying of something serious. They feed it because it looks tired. Almost every one of those instincts either does nothing or actively costs you flowers later this season. And if your daylily is a reblooming variety, the mistake you make in August is the exact reason you'll get 0 second flush in September. Today, I'm giving you exactly what your daylily needs right now, and exactly what most gardening advice gets backwards about this plant. Before we get into it, drop your US state or growing zone in the comments right now. Daylily care in August looks completely different if you're in Minnesota with a 6-week bloom window. I want to make sure everything in this video actually applies to your garden. I read every comment. Let's go. Number 1, water deeply and consistently right now, because this is when next month's flowers are actually being built. This is the opposite of what a lot of drought-tolerant perennial advice tells you to do, and it trips people up. Daylilies genuinely tolerate short, dry spells once established. That part is true. But if you're growing a reblooming variety, and you want that second flush of flowers in late summer or early fall, the plant is building those new flowerscapes underground right now, in August, using stored energy and whatever moisture it can pull from the soil. Here's why this matters so much this month specifically. Drought stress during the exact weeks when that second bloom cycle is initiating underground is the single most common reason a reblooming daylily fails to rebloom at all. The plant isn't dead, it isn't diseased, it simply never got the resources to push a new scape. The rule is simple. Give your daylily roughly 1 to 1.5 inches of water per week if rain isn't providing it. Deliver deeply at the root zone, rather than a light daily sprinkle. Water at the base, not overhead. Because wet foliage sitting in August humidity is exactly what invites the fungal problems we'll get to in a minute. If your rebloomers looked fantastic in June and July, and then just stopped with nothing new coming, walk out right now and check whether they've actually been getting consistent moisture through the heat, or whether they've been running dry for weeks while you assume they were fine because daylilies are supposed to be tough. Tell me in the comments, is your daylily a rebloomer, and has it thrown any new scapes since July? Number 2, stop just snipping the flower and start removing the entire finished scape at the base. This is where most gardening advice stops halfway. Deadheading the spent bloom itself, pinching off that single wilted flower, is a good habit, and it does prevent that individual bloom from setting seed. But here's what almost nobody tells you. Once every bud on a scape has finished opening, the tall flower stalk itself is still sitting there, pulling energy from the plant while it tries to mature any seed pods that formed. The mistake that costs gardeners the most flowers is leaving that finished stalk standing, because it still looks structurally fine, upright and green, so it doesn't feel like something that needs removing. Once every flower on a scape has opened and faded, cut the entire scape down low, right at the base near the foliage, not just the top few inches. This tells the plant to stop investing in that finished stalk and redirect stored energy toward producing a new one on reblooming types. University of Arkansas Extension has specifically flagged Stella de Oro, one of the most widely planted reblooming daylilies in American gardens, as a variety that sets seed unusually heavily. And leaving its finished scapes standing actively suppresses further reblooming more than it does on other cultivars. If you've been growing Stella de Oro or Happy Returns and wondering why the rebloom slowed down after a strong June, check your beds for old scapes still standing with dried seed pods forming, and cut every one of them to the base today. Number 3, understand that deadheading individual blooms does not add flowers to a scape, no matter how diligently you do it. Here's the truth most daylily content skips over, because it sounds like it contradicts step 2, but it doesn't. The number of buds on any given flowerscape is fixed by genetics and by the growing conditions the plant experienced while that scape was forming weeks earlier. If a scape came up with 9 buds, you will get 9 flowers from it, whether you deadhead the spent blooms daily or ignore them completely. Deadheading the individual flower doesn't create new buds on that same stalk. What deadheading and full scape removal actually do is protect the plant's energy reserves so it has what it needs to produce additional new scapes later in the season on reblooming varieties, and to store enough energy in the roots for a strong bloom next year on every variety, reblooming or not. This distinction matters because gardeners get frustrated deadheading obsessively and seeing no immediate increase in flower count on that same stalk. then give up on the practice entirely, including the scape removal that actually does matter. Keep deadheading for plant appearance and to stop seed formation, but understand the reward shows up as new scapes and future bloom strength, not as more flowers appearing on a stalk you've already had for 2 weeks. If this video is explaining something about your daylilies that finally makes sense, hit subscribe right now. This channel puts out zone-specific. Number 4, learn to tell daylily rust apart from daylily leaf streak apart from ordinary pest damage, because treating the wrong one wastes your effort and your plant keeps declining. Daylily rust shows up as small, yellow, water-soaked spots on the upper leaf surface that develop into raised orange pustules, and the fastest field test is to run your finger along the underside of a suspicious leaf. If it comes away with an orange, powdery residue, that's rust. Daylily leaf streak looks similar at a glance, but behaves differently. It starts as a yellow streak running along the central midvein, usually beginning at the leaf tip and working downward, with lesions that stay flat rather than raised, and the leaf eventually withers from that streak outward. Both are fungal. Both spread fastest through splashing water and overcrowded plantings with poor airflow, and both slow down significantly once temperatures climb above 90 degrees, which is actually good news for a lot of August gardens in hotter zones. If what you're seeing isn't fungal at all, look for 2 very different pest signatures instead. Thrips leave a silvery, streaky stippling on leaves and can cause flower buds to abort without ever opening. Spider mites leave fine webbing between leaves, along with a dustier, more uniform yellow speckling, and they get dramatically worse during hot, dry stretches, which loops directly back to the watering habits we talked about in step 1. Clean up dead foliage around the base of your plants this week, regardless of which of these you're dealing with, since infected and infested debris left on the ground is how all 4 of these problems carry over and get worse. Hit the like button right now if this is the first time anyone's actually walked you through telling these apart, instead of just saying, spray it and see. Number 5, stop feeding your daylily heavily this month, because excess nitrogen is quietly making your pest problem worse. Daylilies have a reputation as low-maintenance perennials for a reason. Once established in soil with reasonable organic matter, they genuinely do not need frequent fertilizing, and a light application in spring is sufficient for the entire season for most garden beds. Here's what almost nobody connects for you. Washington State University's extension guidance specifically notes that excess nitrogen and dry soil conditions make daylilies more vulnerable to thrips damage. So a gardener who's been feeding heavily because the plant needs a boost during a hot, dry August is often doing 2 things at once: pushing soft new growth that thrips and aphids prefer, and simultaneously creating the exact drought-stress conditions where mites and thrips do the most damage. If you've noticed pest activity climbing at the same time you've been on a regular feeding schedule, that's not a coincidence you should ignore. Cut back to no fertilizer for the rest of this season on established garden bed daylilies, unless you're growing in containers, where limited soil volume genuinely does deplete faster, and a light feed remains reasonable. Let the plant put its energy into root storage and, on rebloomers, into that second flush, instead of into vegetative growth that pests are specifically drawn to. Number 6. Late summer is actually one of the best times to divide an overcrowded clump, and August is when you should be deciding whether this year's clump needs it. If your daylily clump has gotten dense enough that bloom count has visibly dropped compared to a few years ago, or the center of the clump looks thin and hollow while the outer ring still performs, that's the classic sign of an overcrowded root system competing with itself for water and nutrients. The mistake gardeners make is either ignoring this decline for years, assuming the plant is simply aging out, or dividing at the wrong time, like the peak heat of July, or right before a hard frost with no recovery window. The better target is roughly 6 to 8 weeks before your first expected frost date, which for most of the country lands in late summer, giving divided fans enough time to reestablish root systems before winter dormancy. When you divide, lift the entire clump. Shake or hose off excess soil so you can actually see the fans and root connections, and separate it into sections with at least 2 to 3 fans and a healthy portion of roots each, rather than pulling apart single fans, which recover more slowly. Replant at the same depth it was growing before, water deeply right after planting, and skip fertilizer at planting time, since a stressed, freshly divided root system doesn't need the added push. Number 7. Remember that reblooming and once-blooming daylilies are not the same plant in disguise, and treating them identically is where a lot of this confusion starts. Standard once-blooming daylilies put on their entire show in a concentrated window, typically peaking in June and July, depending on your zone. And then they're done producing new scapes for the year, regardless of how well you deadhead or feed them. Reblooming cultivars, starting with the famous Stella de Oro and including varieties like Happy Returns, were specifically bred to produce multiple blooming scapes per fan across the season, with some cultivars continuing to push new stalks into September in zones 5 through 7. If you're not certain which type you're growing, that distinction changes everything about how you should read your plant's behavior this month. A once bloomer that's finished flowering by August isn't failing. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And your job now is foliage health and root storage for next year, not chasing more flowers that were never coming. A rebloomer that's finished by August, on the other hand, is very likely a plant that missed water, missed scape removal, or got hit hard enough by pests or disease that it doesn't have the reserves left to push a second flush. Here's your complete daylily checklist for this month before you go. Same symptom, completely different explanation, and the fix only works if you know which plant you're actually looking at. Give rebloomers consistent deep watering, about 1 to 1.5 inches a week, right at the root zone, because that's when the next flush is forming underground. Understand that deadheading protects future bloom energy. It doesn't add buds to a stalk you already have. Once every bud on a scape has opened and faded, cut the whole scape to the base, not just the flower. Learn the finger test for rust versus the streaky mid-vein pattern of leaf streak versus the stippling of thrips and spider mites before you treat anything. Cut back on fertilizer for the rest of this season on established garden beds, since excess nitrogen is feeding your pest problem, not your flowers. Consider dividing an overcrowded clump 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost if bloom count has been declining. And know whether you're growing a reblooming variety. Subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell, and before you go, drop 2 things in the comments. What state or zone are you gardening in? And is your daylily a rebloomer that's actually thrown a second flush this year? I read every single comment, and your answers shape exactly what this channel covers next. Now go check your scapes. Cut the finished ones to the base before you do anything else.